It's Friday, everybody. So today is the day I picked to talk about the team in the Atlantic Division we just love to hate, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Will they remain on top of the division, or will some of the other teams, including your Montreal Canadiens, change all that up? Let's talk some puck. Happy Friday, everybody. Coach here from Puck Talk Montreal. And yes, they are my favorite whipping boys in the National Hockey League, and I love talking about them, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, let's preface this by saying, as I mentioned a few shows ago, I much prefer the older rivalries, okay? Whether it's Buffalo, Boston Bruins, the old Quebec Nordiques, as I mentioned, I miss that rivalry a lot. It was actually my pet peeve in my yearbook when I graduated from high school. That's how old I am anyway, but still. The idea is that in the time that the original rivalries that we all grew up loving went the wayside, new ones developed. Those new ones, the Ottawa Senators, Tampa Bay Lightning, and of course, the most hated team, not only in the province of Quebec, but I think in the rest of Canada outside of Ontario, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Here's the thing about Toronto. We don't just hate them because people in Toronto think that the world revolves around Toronto, right? Everybody says that. Whether it's true or not, who knows? But here's the thing about the Leafs. Every year, they end up at the top of their division. Every year, we think they're going to do something different in the playoffs, and every year, they shit the bed. And why? Well, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to this team. So the why will be very simple, and it has nothing to do with numbers. Well, let's take a look at what they did as far as signings are concerned this offseason. When you take a look at the signings for the Toronto Maple Leafs, Nick Robertson getting re-signed just recently, that's a good one. Vinny Lettieri, Bo Gru, Travis Boyd, Dakota Mermis, Mike Pizzetta. Remember that guy from the Montreal Canadiens? He's apparently supposed to replace Ryan Reeves. Good luck with that. The bottom three are the ones that we look at. Of course, there's Mitch Marner, got signed and traded at $12 million for 8 years. Matthew Knies getting re-signed 6 years, $775. And then the ageless wonder, John Tavares, taking a pay cut, $4.389 million over 4 years. Now, I get it. I understand John Tavares is still a very good player. Putting him in the two spot to be your second line centerman is a smart idea. And considering he took a hometown discount, despite the fact that, everything he went through last year, as far as losing the captaincy and everything like that, it just shows how much he actually wants to be in Toronto and wants to win in Toronto. So that's a good thing. But when you take a look at the other guys that were signed, the complete overpayment for Matthew Knies is absolutely ridiculous. $7.75 million for Matthew Knies. He's had one good season. How do you justify $7.75 million? This is, as usual, an example of Brad Treliving's way of managing a hockey club. It burned him in Calgary. Now in Toronto, he came in to be the savior for Kyle Dubas, but his thinking is going to burn him again. Now, whether or not Brendan Shanahan leaving changes things remains to be seen. But the Leafs have work to do. Okay, they have a lot of work to do. As far as transactions are concerned, you've got the Leafs acquiring Dakota Joshua from the Canucks for a 2028 fourth-round pick on July 17th. July 10th, they sent Ryan Reeves to the San Jose Sharks for Henry Thrun. Then you've got the Vegas Golden Knights getting Mitch Marner for Nicholas Roy. And finally, Toronto acquiring Matthias Maccelli from the Utah Mammoth for an additional 2027 third-round pick. So not much as far as movement is concerned for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Here's the big one, though. Mitch Marner had over 100 points last season. And I know a lot of people are going to say it doesn't matter. They're going to make up for it with other players. Yeah, maybe. Maybe William Nylander has a better season and produces more points. Maybe, Auston Matthews gets off to a better start. But those 110 points that Matthews leaves on the table for the Toronto Maple Leafs, that's a big gap. It's not 50 or 60 points. It's 110. And it's the guy who used to get the primary assist on most of Auston Matthews' goals. That's the part that I think the Leafs just didn't think about as far as getting a playmaker to play with Matthews. Nylander's a shooter, just like Matthews. Who's going to be the playmaker on that line? For everything that Mitch Marner was not, the one thing that he was, despite the fact he didn't have much success in the playoffs, and that's no fault of his own, I'll get to that in a minute, Mitch Marner was the catalyst on the Toronto Maple Leafs first line. It wasn't Matthews. Despite the fact that Matthews had all kind of skill and could finish and a great wrist shot, and there's no denying he's got talent. Mitch Marner, not only was he good killing penalties, he was good when he called upon in the faceoff circle, and he could thread the needle on passes. Those are skills that are hard to find. We know here in Montreal very well that finding scoring wingers that can, pass the puck and be good are very difficult to bring online, right? We're just going to see now what Ivan Demidov's going to look like on the right wing. But by and large, finding playmaking wingers, that's a really minute group of players. So they had it. They could have kept him. But instead, they succumbed to what the fans were jeering about. His shortcomings in the playoffs. But he wasn't alone in that. But we'll get to that in a minute when it comes to the Leafs. But let's take a look at the regular season for the Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens. Now, of course, the Leafs, as I mentioned earlier in other shows, they did end up finishing number 1 in the division with 108 points. So ask yourself, can the Leafs get back there again? They can. They normally do, right? But the most important thing about the Leafs isn't the regular season, it's the playoffs. But the regular season speaks volumes towards where they can get playoff-wise. When you take a look at the season series, the Canadiens opened the season with a 1-0 shutout win over the Toronto Maple Leafs back on October 9th of last year. And it was a huge win. Sam Montembeault standing on his head, facing 48 shots and stopping all of them. And it was what it was. But then you take a look at the last 3 games versus the Leafs. November 9th, the Habs lose 4-1. January 18th, the Habs lose 7-3. And finally, they lose 1-0 in OT in Toronto. Toronto bookending the season with a shutout win. So here's the thing about the Toronto Maple Leafs and Montreal. Montreal's face-off percentage against the Leafs was at 47.32%. Goaltending for Toronto was a hell of a lot better than Montreal. Montreal's goaltending, while good, was at .910. Toronto's a whopping .957. That's a tribute to Jacob Wall. No, it's not Jacob Wall. It's Joseph Wall. And Anthony Stolarz, especially Stolarz. Stolarz was fantastic for the Leafs last season. And that's one thing the Leafs haven't had in quite some time. Solid goaltending. So the fact that both those guys posted above .910 save percentages is something that the Leafs have needed for years, right? We know they've gone through all kinds of stupid goaltenders when it comes to James Reimer. And, they had... they don't come to me right now. I haven't even thought about this. But, they've had goaltenders that just couldn't cut the mustard in Toronto when it comes to playing in that market. And so right now they've got Stolarz and Wall, and both of them fantastic, and I expect them to be just as good next season. Power play-wise, the Canadiens 3 for 14, 21%. The Toronto Maple Leafs 4 for 16, 25%. Here's the thing, though. Both the teams, very undisciplined when it comes to playing against each other. So that's where part of the battle is going to be with these teams. Is who stays more disciplined is going to win, right? That's number 1. Number 2, the Canadiens have to get better in goal against the Leafs. It can't just be, one game and done. If it wasn't for that shutout against the Leafs early on in the season, that save percentage would have been much lower. against the Leafs, and that wouldn't have boded well, especially after the 7-3 loss to the Leafs right here at the Bell Center. So, what is it about the Leafs that makes them so special? They're not special. They have a lot of skill. There is no arguing that point. As we take a look at their roster, you got Nyes, Matthews, and Nylander, the projected first line. Domi, Tavares, and Michelli, the projected second line. McMahon, Ottawa, and Yarncroc, the third line, and then Joshua Lawton and Lawrence, the fourth. On defense, McCabe, Riley, and Benoit, Tanev, Carlo, and Ekman-Larsson. So the Leafs have gotten better on defense. Their goaltending has gotten better. And up front, they've still got quite a bit of skill. So can they contend for that top division spot again? I think they can. I think they will. But will they be as far ahead in the standings as some other teams in the division? Honestly, it depends more on the teams outside the Atlantic than in the Atlantic, because in the Atlantic, there are 4 teams the Leafs have to worry about. Florida and Tampa, Detroit, and Montreal. Make it 5, even Ottawa. All 5 of those teams are going to be really good this year. Where they end up in the standings, it's going to be tight. I can tell you that much. I don't foresee Boston or Buffalo being anywhere near contention, but those top 6 spots in the division are going to be super tight. Every point is going to matter. So every penalty is going to matter, every power play, every penalty kill situation. But the thing about the Leafs, where you can get them and where you can beat them, is between the ears. Because the one thing that the Leafs have that the Canadiens have in droves is chemistry. We've seen it time again, guys arguing on the bench and not being able to get along. And the thing about lack of chemistry, it leads to what we see every year from Toronto, and that is early playoff exits. You have to have a certain level of give a shit in the playoffs for each other to be able to win. And it just doesn't seem like that's happening. Toronto's biggest issue in the playoffs, they can't score. Not for lack of trying. William Nylander, over the past, I'd say 5 years, has been the best scoring player on the Toronto Maple Leafs, the most consistent. And Auston Matthews may score a little bit more like he did in the first round last year, but in the second round he disappeared. This past season in the first round, he was nowhere to be found. So how do you explain that from your captain and best player that they can't produce? Sure, the other teams put their best defensive forward up against them, and yes, they give him a difficult time. But he should be expecting that, and he should be able to play above that. He doesn't. And when it gets bad, Matthews stops believing in himself. When he stops believing in himself, he takes stupid chances, stupid shots. He doesn't share the puck, and it hurts the rest of his team. The same holds true for William Nylander. When he's on a roll, he wants the puck, and he doesn't share. Fires the puck, more often than not he scores, but Nylander's got to learn to share. John Tavares has to be able to produce. He hasn't in the past couple of seasons. So what's going to happen with the Leafs? It's tough to say because a lot of teams have good defense. A lot of teams have good forwards. The biggest thing that Toronto has over everybody else in the Atlantic Division, and suffice to say, I'm very surprised I'm saying this, is goaltending. Because the Leafs never had good goaltenders. They do now. They have 2 quality goaltenders that could start any big game against any opponent. So the Leafs are going to be a tough out. Do I want them to be a tough out? No, I want the Canadiens to beat them to a pulp. Beat them silly. Can the Montreal Canadiens do it? I think the lineup's comparable if you look at it up and down. The Canadiens' top 9 is going to be extremely solid this season. You take a look at it, and if you look at the roster, right, there's a very strong possibility that Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher can end up on your 4th line. Gallagher had 21 goals last year. Anderson, I believe, had 17. I'd have to look it up. But think about it for a minute. That's some good quality on your 4th line. And then you've got younger, better players coming in to be on the 2nd and 3rd line. And your 1st line, you've got a Yuri Slafkovsky who's hungry, wants to be better. You've got a Nick Suzuki who wants to break the 100-point plateau. And you've got a Cole Caufield who wants to score 45 to 50 goals next season. The same holds true for Patrick Laine. He's hungry to provide more offense. He's been working hard in the offseason to get his game into game shape. Ivan Demidov, everybody's antsy about getting him into the lineup and see what he can do. Will he produce right away? He looked like he was pretty comfortable at the end of last season and in the playoffs. He was creating offense. Maybe didn't get the point production we wanted. Not a lot of people did from the Canadiens, but he did generate offense, which is what you want to see from the kid. So there was a lot of excitement because our forward group is really good, and so is our D. Our question mark, which is no longer the question mark for Toronto, is our goaltending. Can Sam Montembeault rise to the occasion against the Leafs? He hasn't in the past, with the exception of one game, that being the home opener last season. But let's see. There's other options now. Jakub Dobeš is there. Dobeš, capable backup. Showed that he can stop pucks against good teams. It's going to be interesting. I don't want the Leafs to win the division. I want them to sit there and say, oh, why didn't we do it? I want the Leafs to fall in the standings. Will they? It all depends on the rest of the teams in the division. We all need to be just as good, if not better. And the Canadiens can be better than most of the teams in this division. Can they put it together? We'll see. Defense is in the right place. Offense is in the right place. Chemistry is in the right place. Goaltending still needs work. What do you think? Do you think the Leafs are going to end up higher in the standings than Montreal once again? Do you honestly think the Leafs are going to stay at the top of the division, or will they flounder a little bit, given the fact that they lost 110 points and Marner doesn't provide them anymore? Put it in the comments. Let me know. We can discuss it. I'm always there reading the comments. I'm always there supporting the fan base and giving my 2 cents to the comments as well. And be sure, give the video a like. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Show us some love. And we'll see you all next episode.